One of the questions that the commentators deal with in the Parashat Bo is the role of Matza, or the symbolism of Matza. Matza is mentioned as happening after Yetzias Mitzrayim, when they left Egypt. Vayofu et habatzei asher hotziu miMitzrayim ugot matzo ki lo chametz, ki gashu Mitzrayim lo yichlu mamea. They were chased out of Egypt. They didn't have time to wait, and therefore, they took the dough out, and it became matzah when they arrived in their first in their first resting place. They arrived, and it was matzah. They found it turned into matzah. So matzah is a symbolism of the geula, of leaving Mitzrayim in a hurry, b'chipazon, and therefore it represents the geula. The question that the Mefarshim ask is why in Pesach Mitzrayim, before they left Egypt, when they had to bring the Korban Pesach, why did they eat the Korban Pesach al matzah umram yochluhu? They ate the Korban Pesach together with matzah umaror. What was the role of matzah before? What was the role of matzah before they left Mitzrayim? Before this entire event took place? So there are many different answers to that question. The simple answer, I think the most simple answer, is based on a dual symbolism of matzah. We say in Devarim, Shevas Yamim Tochal Alav Matzot Lechem Oni. The matzah is referred to as lechem oni, the bread of, some people mistranslate it as the poor man's bread. Halach ma'anya di achalo avasan bar de Mitzrayim. We say in Haggadah Shel Pesach, it's not lechem of an ani, of a poor person, but rather it's the bread of affliction, of oppression, of inui. So when it says lechem oni and halach ma'anya, it's referring to what we ate in Mitzrayim during the years of slavery and of hardship. And this idea of inui, of oppression, is one of the major themes of Shibud Mitzrayim, and we already find that in the nevuah given to Avram, when it says, "Vayomer Avram yadoa teda ki ger yazaracha be'eretz lo lehem vavadum v'inu otam." They will be enslaved, they will work, and they will be oppressed, v'inu otam. And therefore, inui is certainly one of the major themes. When we look at the beginning of Shemot, so those two themes come up again. But it's interesting that the order is turned around. Vayasim olav sarai misim leman anoto besivlotam. The term here is anoto, the oppression, the affliction. Leman anoto besivlotam. Vayiven arei miskenot lefaro et pitom vet ramses. V'chasher ya'anu oto. Again, the term ya'anu, ken yirbeh v'chen yifrot, so too they multiplied. As a function of the oppression, they multiplied. Vayakutzu b'nei bnei Yisrael. So these psukim relate to v'inu otam, the oppression. Then you have another two psukim. Vayavidu Mitzrayim bnei Yisrael b'farech. They enslaved them, they worked them hard. Vayimaru et chayem ba'avodah kasha. And they made their lives bitter, miserable with the difficult work. And the motif that's being repeated in these psukim is avodah. So you have avodah and inui, vavadum v'inuotam. But the order is the other way around. In other words, it's not that the primary purpose of enslaving them was in order to benefit from their work, and in order to benefit from work they also oppressed them, but rather the order is changed around. The primary theme is inui, to oppress them, and in order to oppress them they also enslaved them and forced them into difficult labor. That's a very, very significant switch, especially if we talk about how was Paro and how were Mitzrayim guilty if all of this was predetermined by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A lot of answers were given to that question, but one of the answers are, they took what was decreed much further. One of the indications of taking it much further is the shift of the order between inui and avodah. The primary purpose is inui, to oppress, while the secondary theme is the labor. Okay, based on these two different themes, we can talk about exactly what the symbolism of the matzah is. The matzah, as we said, is parallel to the inui. On the other hand, there is another thing that we eat on Leil HaSeder, which is parallel to the labor. Marazu shanu ochlim al shuma, al shum shememeru hamitzrim et chayev otein mitzrayim shne'emar Vayimaru et chayim ba'avodah kasha. The psukim that deal with the labor, there the term vayimaru et chayim is mentioned. In other words, the maror is connected to the labor, the physical labor, while the lechem is connected to the lechem oni, the matzah is connected to the oppression and the inui. Now, what's interesting is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to redeem the people, what he notices at first, kavayachol, is the inui. The pasuk says at the snev, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, "Ra'or ha'iti et ani ami asher mitzrayim." What did he see? Not the avodah, ani ami asher mitzrayim. The only, the oppression. We say in Arami Oviravi, "Vayar et anyenu et amalenu et alchatzenu." The first thing that mentioned is anyenu. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw is anyenu. In Nehemiah, we say it in the Psukim in Zimra every morning. V'atere et ani avoteinu b'Mitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw the oppression of our fathers in Egypt. And what's interesting is that what Moshe sees when he comes out of the palace, when he grows up and he comes out of the palace, Vayi bayamim hahem vayigdal Moshe ve'etzel achav vayar. What does he see? No, not only, but vayar b'sivlotam. Sivlotam is the physical expression of the only. The only, the oppression, is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu can see the heart of man, while what Moshe sees is the Sefer. The term Sivlotam is always connected to the only. The oppression is connected to Sefer. So at this point, what exactly is the difference between avodah and between inui? Avodah is difficult physical labor. The difficulty is physical. Only goes to the root of one's inner self. It's a depth experience. We say v'initem et nafshotechem. It's regarding Yom Kippur. V'initem et nafshotechem. The inui is a function of the nefesh. It's a depth experience of the inner self. So when you talk about the labor is something more superficial, has to do with the taste of the maror, and it deals with things that are more superficial. The inui is something that is a way of oppressing the people themselves. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees the inui. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ro el levav. He can see the inner self, and he sees the oppression. What Moshe comes out and sees is the sevel, the suffering, and the actual physical, the expressions of the suffering, rather than the inner self. But Vayar b'sivotam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees the inui, and Moshe Rabbeinu comes and sees the sevel, which is a function, which is a result of that same inui. When Moshe and Aaron ask Paro to free the people, so Vayomer alem belach Mitzrayim, what does Paro respond? Lama Moshe v'Aaron tafriu et ha'am mima'asav lechu lesivlotechem. Vayomer Paro hein rabim atam ha'aretz v'hishbatem otam b'sivlotam. What bothers Paro is that, to go away and have, a vacation from the difficult labor for a few days and then to come back. Okay, the effect on the economy won't be so terrible. They'll manage to survive that. But taking the emotional and psychological pressure off, if they go on vacation and all of a sudden they feel that there's, they're ruled not by Paro, but they're ruled by God, and that will totally destroy that sense of oppression and the pressure that they feel psychologically and emotionally. So the reason that Paro doesn't let them go is because v'shbatem otam misivlotam. He'll take them away from their suffering as opposed to the labor per se. That's what bothers Paro. So again, the role of suffering within the Shibud Mitzrayim becomes, suffering and inui and the oppression becomes something which is one of the key motifs. In the Arba Lashon Shel Geula, Lachein emor lebnei Yisrael ani Hashem v'hotzeti etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim v'itzalti otam me'etchem me'avotam. The first thing that's mentioned is mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim. Sivlot Mitzrayim is, again, parallel to the inui. And aside from that, hitzalti otam me'avotam v'galti otchem b'zorim tuyav shatim gdolim V'lakachti atchem li la'am, I will take you as a people. V'hayiti lechem elokim, I will be your God. V'yidatem ki ani Hashem elokechem hamotzi atchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim. So the Abel Shon's Geula begin with Sivlot Mitzrayim, and they end with Sivlot Mitzrayim. It comes, it closes as a parenthesis, beginning at the end. The whole idea of the Abel Shon's Shalgula, which begins with saving them from the Sevel, which is a result of the Inoi, and ends with saving them from Mitachat Sivlot Mitzrayim. Okay. Now let's go back to Parshas Bo and the dual symbolism of matzah. We said matzah on the one hand is lechem oni, and lechem oni is what they ate before they went out of Egypt. That's what they ate al matzot u'marom yochlu. They ate maror, which is symbolic of the slavery, together with lechem oni, which is symbolic of the inoi, together with the Korban Pesach. And then when they come out, all of a sudden, they're given a different mitzvah to eat matzah. Matzah zushanu klal shuma. The fact that they went out b'chipazon and they didn't have time, lo yachul smameya, and therefore it didn't bake properly, and they ate matzah. We explained why there are two different symbolisms of the shibud. One which is reflective of the inui, and the other which is an expression of the labor. There are also two different symbolisms for the geula. One is the matzah, which is symbolic of them actually going free from Egypt and leaving, which they left the next day, and the matzah, which is, which occurs at, the Korban Pesach, which occurs at Chatzos, which is symbolic of not the going free, politically, but rather the Shechina, which appeared at Chatzos, which is connected, of course, to Mikdash and to the Korban. Why is the same object used for one of the symbols of the shibud and for one of the symbols of the geula? Why is matzah used for both? Why couldn't they find something else to symbolize either the inoi or something else to symbolize the idea of going free? Why did they use matzah to be symbolic of both? So in order to explain that, I want to show you that the idea of inoi and oppression is something that leads to HaKadosh Baruch Hu listening and being going. We saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu vayares onyenu. We saw that he sees the inui. HaKadosh Baruch Hu notices inui and responds. Vatanes Sarah v'tivrach mipanea. By Hagar, Sarah oppressed Hagar, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Hagar, "Vayomer la malach Hashem hinach harav elad bein v'kat shmo Yisrael ki shama Hashem el anyech." God noticed your suffering. God noticed the oppression, and God responds, and therefore He will give you a child. The pasuk says, "Kol almana yasom lo ta'anun." You shouldn't oppress the widow and the orphan. Im anei ta'anei oto. If you will oppress them, Kim tza'ok yitzak elai, shamoa eshma tzakato. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu responds to oppression. The way I'd like to see what happened in Mitzrayim was as follows. There's a symbolism for the labor. There's a symbolism, matzah is lechem oni, for the oppression. They went out of Mitzrayim, and then when they got out of Mitzrayim and they stopped, the first stop, all of a sudden they took their food from their bags, and all of a sudden it was the same matzah they ate the night before. They understood that there's a connection, there's a line that connects the lechem oni with the Yetziat Mitzrayim. They suffered all those years, but that suffering is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu noticed. It's the suffering what HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded to, and it's that suffering that eventually led to the Yetziat Mitzrayim and the lechem of the Geula.